Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and I'm currently driving this lifted, oversized tire RAV4 Hybrid. It's a couple of years old, but it's the current generation, and I want to share with you guys, a little bit of tire spin with traction off, what it's like to drive a slightly lifted RAV4. Maybe you're comparing this to the competition, like a CX-50 Meridian that's more off-road based, or maybe something like a Subaru Forester that has more ground clearance than roughly the 8 inches that this comes with from the factory. So if you're watching this video, you probably want to know, how does it do and what kind of mileage does it get, and how is the acceleration? Well, let me show you a 65 roll real quick. It does okay. I mean, it's not quick by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not really slower than any of the other 4-cylinder crossovers that this competes with. 0 to 60, let's get right to that, so I don't keep you guys waiting in case you want to see what this actually does. Keep in mind, I'm at a few thousand feet of altitude, so it's not going to be, textbook 0 to 60. 0 to 60 in the lifted RAV4. Density altitude's over 2,000 feet, so the gas portion of this power plant is down on power about 7 or 8%. I have sport mode on, traction off, brake rev. Let's go. 0 to 30 felt really good. And true 0 to 60 came in at 8.77 seconds. Not too bad given the fact that this has some pretty aggressive all-terrain tires and a little bit of a lift. But still, sub 9 seconds in my area is not bad. And then if you're wondering, the factory wheels on this, which would come with an all-season, is a 225, 65, 17. That's roughly a 28.5-inch tire. This one is only one tire size bigger. It's a 235, 65, 17. So it's about a 29-inch wheel, and the best I can tell, these are probably about a 1-inch lift. There's not really any fancy bits on it. It's just a Les Schwab open range all-terrain tire that has the snowflake mounted peak rating, and it's a pretty good tire at that. I actually had those on my last Tacoma, a 2017 Axis cab, and I really like them. I think I put about 20,000 miles on them before I ended up selling that vehicle. So from my experience, I really like them. I'm not sure that they're better than the Geolanders that come on the Wilderness Subarus, like what I have on my Outback Wilderness. But if you want a hybrid, if you want a little bit more power than, say, what a Subaru Forester or a base, 2.5 liter Skyactiv Mazda comes with, this might be the option for you. These have about 217 horsepower, and even just cruising around, getting a little bit rowdy earlier, I'm still getting over 26 mpg. When I first reset the trip, though, I was getting in the upper 30s on my way out of town. So not bad for going 60 miles an hour and having a little bit more capability than what the factory RAV4 comes with, or for quite the bargain, quite a bit less than the TRD off-road RAV4. Because those things are, in my opinion, a little bit overpriced for what you get. And if you like Toyotas, lifted RAV4s, or my video, please consider liking my video. And big thanks to Twin Falls Subaru for letting me borrow theirs for the day. So I'll link this one below if you're interested. But this has been really good. All other characteristics of it so far honestly feel very similar to what a regular RAV4 feels like, other than I feel like I am just sitting up a tiny bit higher off the ground looking down on this Murano. Or I almost feel like I'm looking down a little bit on this Ford up ahead. But overall, the driving impressions are very similar. The steering is still fairly sensitive. You don't want to go around a corner too fast because the suspension on this, similar to factory, it's not a sports car, it's a crossover. And Toyota offers you a lot in their hybrid realm. You get a lot of good components, you get a lot of good reliability and technology, but you don't get a sports car experience. And some of the deficits of this crossover is that it doesn't handle like a CX-5 or some of the higher end brands. But that's not why you buy this. And in this case, if you buy this or if you modify your own, because there's a couple million of the current generation RAV4 out on the road, since they sell about 400,000 in the US alone, you probably are wondering, should I lift it or should I go, with a different brand, a different make and model if I want an off-road CUV? And honestly, so far, initial driving impressions, I think this is a pretty good vehicle. It has 34,000 miles, it is a few years old, and as you can see, the cloth seats and the interior panels, they've held up really well. It honestly looks really nice in here. The seats show a little bit of wear, a little bit of tear, but there's not, any concerns with how this interior is held up. These are known to go for several 100,000 miles, and Toyota's hybrid components are also very well established and very well designed. So whether you buy a new one, a used one, or you decide to modify yours partway through the ownership experience, maybe when it's out of warranty, I wouldn't have any reservations in recommending that if that's what you want to do. Whatever is going to give a little bit more life to your RAV4 and help you enjoy it a little bit more. But these tires do really well even on dry ground today, although it is sub, freezing temperatures just barely. It brakes really well. I'm sure these are just the stock factory pads that are, slightly worn out because it only has 34,000 miles. You usually don't have to replace brake pads, in that low of mileage. Or you want to get around traffic, it does really good at that too. It almost feels like you're going faster than you are in this because the instant torque of the hybrid system, which I also think really adds to the playfulness and the, no pun intended, but the energy level of low RPM acceleration, because you have a lot of electric punch, and that's not limited by altitude. So whether you're on a mountain or you're at sea level, you're going to feel that punch. And then the engine does get a little bit more short-winded, top of the RPM, like when you saw my 65 roll at the beginning of this video. But overall, it's doing really well. So let's get a little bit more, down to some dirt trails, and we'll see how this does off-road. But something really cool is at low speeds, you can move in battery-only mode. The actual gas engine doesn't kick on until you're going just a little bit faster. So low speeds, you sometimes don't even know if the engine's running or not because it is pretty quiet. When you rev it out, it does get a little bit rattly, as a lot of 4-cylinders do, just because they're not super well balanced, like a sports car high revving, lightweight flywheel, lightweight crankshaft type of engine would be. But it's really smooth down low, and with these knobbier tires, I really can't feel, any inconveniences from them. This system is really well integrated, and when the gas engine kicks on and off, it's not like a typical start-stop system on a 4-cylinder that's like an afterthought and it's rough and feels abusive to the vehicle. This feels really smooth. It feels really designed. When I slow down, it's like if I couldn't hear the difference in tone when I'm not talking, it's hard to tell what the power source is. And having, both systems, it's really cool that you get the best of both worlds. You get the range of a hybrid, you get the low-end torque of an electric motor, but you get, what ultimately still works for a lot of areas in the country, a gas-powered engine where you're going to have more range, you're going to have more power on board than, a full-on EV that only has the equivalent of a couple gallons of gas worth of power with its, 60 to 90 kilowatt-hour battery. And this Toyota hybrid system really does well. And just normal driving, it really, again, doesn't feel much different than a normal hybrid without, a half-inch larger diameter tire that's much more aggressive and maybe an inch of body lift. And after driving this around on the periphery of town and just for a little bit longer, it's honestly pretty fun. I really like the setup on this, and the suspension still on this kind of washboard dirt road feels basically like factory. There's just a tiny bit more sidewall, a little bit more thickness to the sidewall as well, and these tires are handling really well. Even going 30 miles an hour off-road, it's a little bit bumpy, but not more than anything else that this competes against. This is actually pretty impressive. Just avoid the bigger potholes, but if you accidentally hit one, don't feel too bad, because the better tire that you have on this one is going to protect you more. Honestly, guys, the factory all-seasons that most of their RAV4 hybrids come with are pretty pathetic, and some of the all-terrain tires that RAV4s come with are even shaved down like the Falcons. These open range from Les Schwab are honestly a really good tire, and it's noticeable. Obviously, this road doesn't really require four-wheel drive. This is just a simple dirt road. There's not really anywhere that you could get stuck, as long as you don't fall through the bushes and into the river over there. But honestly, I'm having a pretty good time driving this. I do want to mention, though, that the hybrid RAV4 does not have a very good all-wheel drive system. It's very reactionary, and it's very much kind of an afterthought with that electric motor kicking in on the rear. So there's a lot of videos where people have done pretty extensive testing, and it shows that this just is not as good as a Mazda, definitely not as good as a Subaru, or even like H-Track with Hyundai and Kia, or the newest of Hondas, their all-wheel drive system like what's on the Pilot. It just isn't as good. I do hope that the next gen RAV4 has a more competitive system, but traction is everything. So get better tires if you really live in wintry climates. You might not consider this because of its all-wheel drive lack of capability, but if you're gonna buy some nice all seasons, nicer all-terrains, or even a winter dedicated tire, it's not gonna be a problem. The rear will kick in when it needs to, but otherwise most of the weight is over the front with the engine anyways. So as long as you have good traction, good grip, and healthy tires that aren't worn out or aged, I think you're gonna do pretty well. And overall, I've honestly really enjoyed driving this RAV4. I think it's fun. And I think if you want to lift yours, go ahead. Find a good suspension, preferably one that's better than the factory. Or even if you drive it factory for a while, decide that that's not what you want. You can always lift it up and refresh the suspension at that point anyways. And just having a new suspension in general, even if it's the same quality such as what this, at least to me, feels like. So maybe it's like the TRD off-road one. I just didn't get good clarity on what this suspension setup is from the dealership at this time. But it feels good. You know, you can always get better options. And I think now that this RAV4 has been out since 2019, there's going to be a lot more aftermarket support than there was in 2019 when it was a brand new platform. But still, RAV4s, even though they are the #1 selling crossover, gas-powered anyways, there's not a huge following like there is for Subarus or like there is for some of the other like American vehicles, at least in the North American market. But you can always find things, you can always, you know, fabricate yourself if you're skilled in that department. But overall, I don't have any reasons to not recommend it. Still getting over 30 miles per gallon. And the cool thing is, the electric motor on the hybrid really eats up, I think, some of the torque needed to rotate slightly heavier, beefier wheels and tires. So I think it's kind of a win-win, even if this only gets 30 miles per gallon average, no matter what you do, you know, as the cumulative number. And it can do a sub 9 seconds 0 to 60, even at, you know, a half mile of altitude. And you can easily drive on the roads you want to go and enjoy life. And you know, with the big back seats and the huge cargo capacity, you can really do a lot of fun stuff with the RAV4. So why not make it more capable, and why not enjoy it in the way that's going to be the most meaningful to you? But anyways, if you guys like this video, if anyone is still listening, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope to see you on the next one. Until then, take care.